morning, iPhone development team. We're curious if you can make the camera any better on the iPhone. Yeah, we're working on that, Tim. You know, we can increase the size of the sensor a little bit, but obviously the bump gets kind of big on the back. Oh, that's fine. You can make the bump much bigger than that. It's fine. Sure? Okay, well, if you're willing to play ball, we can actually get the camera bump a lot bigger. Is that too big? No, make it bigger. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we could fit an ultra wide and the periscope lens. It's like, I mean, is that too big? No, make it bigger. Okay, but I mean, obviously that's way too big, right? No, make it bigger. Tim, I was just joking. We don't have to make it the size of the phone itself. As I say. Oh God, no! Let's begin! So it's mid-February, I guess, which is when Apple starts sending completed iPhone renders to case manufacturers over in China, because, you know, they need like 6 months to get ready. Take all of it with a grain of salt. We're talking leaks and rumors. Very high chance someone is faking these things, but 9to5Mac received these images, and they kind of go in line with a lot of previous rumors and reports that we've seen from more reliable sources, whether it's Ming-Chi Kuo or Ross Young or Shrimp Apple Pro. It kind of aligns with everything. So if it's a fake, it's a pretty decent fake, and they showcase that the iPhone 15 chassis is overall getting a bit more rounded off, but not quite as drastic as I was hoping. You know, I was wanting a return to original iPhone levels of curved back, and this still seems to keep that kind of classic squared off look that the iPhone has captured since the iPhone 12, but just hopefully sit a little bit more comfortably in the hand. And the benefit of this design is having that 2.5D glass return allows Apple to kind of have a optical illusion with the pixels, making them appear as if they're kind of bulging out from the metal itself, and that's kind of reminiscent of what Apple did with the Apple Watch Series 7. So the benefit of all that is to say that it looks like incredibly thin bezels, slightly smaller form factor compared to the 14 Pro, which I already thought the iPhone 14 Pros had very thin bezels. These are even thinner, which of course just makes it look a bit more fresh, a bit more modern. But we can also tell from these renders that it is very likely a international version because there's still a slot for the SIM card. So either Apple's bringing that back for the iPhone lineup, which I don't think they are. More likely this is a CAD file for the international version, and if anything, that's good evidence that, hey, Apple's keeping around the physical SIM tray for another generation if you live outside the United States. If you live in the US, they're going to replace that SIM tray with a piece of useless plastic. Congratulations. That'll make you feel good when dropping $1,300 on this thing. But also the cutouts for the buttons definitely look a lot more different in my opinion. Like on our current chassis, there is like holes where the buttons would go, but in this CAD file, it looks like the buttons themselves are missing, but the cutouts are combined. So the volume rocker might go back to those like kind of old-fashioned volume rockers where they're all singular one piece, and that may have something to do with the fact that the iPhone is rumored to replace the physical volume and power buttons with solid-state buttons. This kind of reinforces that because it's clearly a lot more different from previous iPhone chassis design. Again, I still feel like this is a solution looking for a problem. Are we really that annoyed with the physical buttons on our phones? I don't think most people are. If anything, I'm more concerned about when the software crashes, will the buttons continue to work? Because that's kind of how we do our hard resets. The other concern I have, and probably the part of this report that if it is a fake, this is probably the biggest giveaway, but the side button, or as many people call it, the power button, definitely looks a lot smaller than a typical iPhone side button has been. Ever since 2017 with the iPhone 10, they've been using much larger side buttons, and this one makes it look a lot smaller. Maybe I'm just looking at it wrong because it's an iPhone 15 Ultra or something, but based on that massive camera bump and how much space it takes up on the back, I'm pretty sure this is a regular 15 Pro. I think it's supposed to be the 6.1 inch model given the size of the dynamic island and everything, but my God, Apple knows no limits when it comes to these camera bumps. I laughed out loud the first time I saw the renders, because it's protruding almost the entire depth of the iPhone chassis. Everything just looks so thick and bulky, and I know the camera wobble that this thing has on a desk is going to be even worse than the iPhone 13 Pro and 14 Pro, which I already was not too happy with. So yeah, I'm sure the camera will be state-of-the-art, and I'm sure it'll be fantastic, but it's just, it's way too big, and I wish Apple could find ways of improving camera quality without putting, an entire Apple Watch size growth on the back that seems to just get worse every year. No amount of cases can help you here, and no, not just making the chassis thicker would cover up the camera bump. They're doing that at the same time. The chassis is getting thicker, and the camera bump is getting thicker. So this is well on its way to becoming the Energizer phone, which had the giant battery, but even the Energizer phone had a camera bump. Don't forget that. Of course, the more exciting part of this report is it once again points to the idea of Apple switching to USB-C. This CAD file does have that. But while Apple may have been pressured by the European Union to switch to USB-C on the iPhone, they may have found their own little way to preserve their Made for iPhone program, because some sources, which are not verified, and of course we can't call anything confirmed at this point, but there's insiders claiming that Apple is going to find a way to design the USB-C port in the iPhone so that it requires certain Apple certified USB-C cables in order to enable certain data transfer speeds or charge speeds, which I'm a little bit skeptical of these reports. On one hand, yes, that does sound like something Apple would do. Like, no, if we're gonna do USB-C, you have to do it our special way, and this could help Apple make their case against the EU by saying, see, even though we put the USB-C port on there, that doesn't mean any USB-C cable will work with the iPhone. Yeah, it sounds kind of like Apple to drag their feet on the matter, but this also could easily just be some FUD to not get our hypes up about the USB-C iPhone, because honestly, Apple's been switching the iPad lineup for like the past 4 or 5 years. More and more of the lineup is switching to Type-C, and none of the Type-C ports on the iPads ever had like a special made for iPad requirement. No, you can plug in any old USB-C cable, any old USB-C charger, or any old data transfer cable and plug it into the iPad and it works. So for the Apple to just magically start requiring different standards for the iPhone, I feel like it would come across pretty petty, and I don't think it would be universally appreciated, but I think that you should remain rightfully skeptical of those reports. But it wouldn't, in my opinion, be unlike Apple for them to come up with some kind of exclusive advantage to the USB-C port on the iPhone that can only be fully utilized with Apple certified USB-C cables, whether that be a faster charging speed, or maybe in order to accommodate for Thunderbolt, you need Apple's own custom Thunderbolt Pro cables or something. But I still don't see that as a deal breaker. Some people out there are like, well, if I can't use any old USB-C cable, what's the whole point of this? And I'm like, no, the whole argument for the most part of switching to Type-C was that so you could have one cable to charge your phone, your iPad, and your Mac. And I still think that would stand here. Even if by some off chance these insiders are right and it turns out the only way to charge the USB-C iPhone is with an Apple certified USB-C cable that reaches their bizarre standards, I still think that would be better than what we have now, because I currently can't use one cable to charge my phone, iPad, and Mac. Whereas if we did get Type-C across more things, okay, maybe they force us to buy 1 or 2 of their exclusive cables, but I mean, people kind of rolled over and got over it really quickly when Apple decided, you know what, we're not going to include headphones or the charge brick anymore. We're just going to ship the iPhone with a cable, and you can find your own charge brick. Same thing, the people that can reuse their old cables will, and the people that needed a new brick just bought the brick. It's not that big a deal, especially when most of these phones are like $900 to over $1,000 for people having to buy a little cable or a little brick. Yeah, it's annoying, and it's Apple being petty about it, but I don't think it's really a deal breaker for that many iPhone buyers. So I hope that ends up not being the case, but the main reason I'm still mostly excited for the iPhone 15 is just the fact that we're getting mid-February, and we're now seeing CAD renders, and people are coming forward and claiming to have more information about it, and yet none of them, anybody, is claiming that Lightning is sticking around for another generation. I'd be a little bit more nervous if we were getting some people claiming that they were going to keep Lightning around, or some people claiming it was going to go portless, but pretty much all the major leakers right now are in agreement that yes, the iPhone is getting USB-C. It's just a question of how fast of a USB-C port will they get, and will they restrict that USB-C port to certain standards? I don't think they will. I think the most likely scenario is Apple comes up with some kind of, they'll find a marketing term for it, supercharge, since they use that on the Apple Silicon all the time. iPhone 15 supports supercharging, and no, not the Tesla kind, but you can charge your iPhone at 60 or 70 watts, but in the fine print it'll say, in order to do that, you have to have a special made for iPhone USB-C port that can handle that extra speed, and you won't be able to use your old OnePlus fast charger on the iPhone at the full 60 or 70 watts, but maybe you will be able to charge it at 10 watts or 15 watts with everyday cables, and you'll still be able to transfer data at a reasonably fast speed. But if you want the fastest speed, you gotta buy the Apple Thunderbolt Pro cable, which, you know, the hardcore pros that are buying the 1 terabyte iPhone or that are shooting in ProRes, they don't mind. They probably already have those Thunderbolt cables that Apple is certified. So that port, honestly, at this point is the most exciting part of the phone for me. Solid state buttons, I feel like, is messing with something that ain't broken, and I'm kind of worried that that's going to complicate the factory resetting process. I'm a little bit disappointed that there could be a physical SIM tray again for the international markets, but not for the US. Like, just let us all have the SIM, Apple. Are you convinced that eSIM is the future or not? You know, just make up your mind. Use that extra space in the phone for something else, but if you're going to continue offering the physical SIM in other countries but not here, it feels kind of wasteful. Camera bump being huge, I'm not a big fan of, but I feel like there's no stopping Apple at this point. They keep growing the bump every year. We keep complaining, and then they keep growing the bump again. So I don't know how to stop them with that. But I will admit, I was kind of hoping the back, at least, of this iPhone would be a little bit more rounded off than what these renders are showing. It still looks pretty squared off to me, you know, squared off enough that the iPhone will probably stand up all on its own. But ever since switching back to the iPhone 10, I've really enjoyed that rounded chassis. I'm a big fan of it. But I will admit, as a decent surprise, that adopting the Series 7 ultra-thin bezels all the way around the edge, yeah, that looks pretty freaking clean, and you'll probably get a lot of decently surprised people when they first pick this phone up. They'll be like, whoa, feels so futuristic. Throw out the 14 Pro Max. That's all dated crap now. I'm gonna keep my iPhone 15 Ultra. But that's the more concerning part about the size of the camera bump on this thing. It's rumored to be the 6.1-inch option, which, in case you forgot, the 6.1-inch iPhone 15 Pro doesn't have the periscope lens. So this is just a gargantuan stovetop, and the 15 Ultra is somehow supposed to accommodate for a whole extra lens, or maybe the periscope lens replaces the telephoto. That thing is gonna be massive, and it makes me wonder, like, is there any limit to how big the bump can get to the point where consumers will actually stop buying it or be afraid to buy it? Because it seems like so many people are going for the Pros. We've basically just convinced Apple that there's no limit to how big the bump can get. You bump up against the MagSafe ring a little bit, but on the bigger phones, you'd be able to lower the MagSafe ring so that it's not exactly in the center anymore, and the wallet and the battery pack would still fit and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of good things I'm excited for, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, this is probably going to be the heaviest iPhone of all time, and I'm very glad I'm using one of the lighter iPhones that feels a lot more comfortable in the hand. So what do you guys think of these renders or the reports about the USB-C port getting a little bit too picky? Feel free to let me know down in the comments below, and thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you all in the next one.